What is going on, guys? Welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm gonna talk about how you know that you struggle with lustful thoughts, right? Or just like lustful tendencies. So I know that in our society today, sexuality has become such a frequently talked about topic, yet there are still people who claim, ironically enough, that we're not talking enough about it. We need to be more open. And my observation has been that we already talk about it too much, so my opinion is that we need to not talk about it as much because a lot of the stuff that we know has already been talked about and we're just adding minor details. But definitely so many people in our society today have their identity, a lot of their core identities wrapped up in their sexuality and in their sexual preferences. Is that normal? No, it's not normal. It could even be a sign of a pathology that you're constantly thinking about it. So a pathology is something that is causing you negative consequences in your life, physically, emotionally, financially, all these kinds of things. That's how you know something is a pathology. And sexuality, constantly being preoccupied with sexual thoughts, is one of those things. How can you tell though? Like, how do you know if you have a problem that you need to take care of? Well, first, let me start off by saying that just because you struggle with that issue does not mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a pervert. It doesn't mean any of those things, right? And the second thing is, this issue doesn't just affect men only, it affects women as well. And why is that important? It's important because we don't want to think so black and white in these kinds of issues. And there's a data that has shown that both men and women consume equal amounts of pornography. It's just in different forms, right? Men tend to consume more visual pornography, whereas women tend to consume more verbal pornography, like in novels and stories. So, but both have the same effect on your brain and on your emotions. So how do you know? How do you know when you're struggling? I know that I'm constantly prefacing things, but first of all, before we even get to that, I want to let you know that thinking about sex does not mean you are a sex addict. It does not mean that you have a pathology. People think about sex, that's normal. That's healthy. I know that, like, especially in the church, at least before, we used to frown upon any sort of sexual topic or sexual thought, just like normal curiosity about it. It's not bad to be curious about it, to be informed, but it would be bad if you're constantly preoccupied with sex. And if you're constantly thinking about how to acquire it, if you're constantly thinking about how to get it, then you have a problem. A lot of times when a person struggles with this issue, they will try to gain it through whatever means possible, whether it's through sleeping with others by being promiscuous, whether it's through, as they say, self-pleasuring, or watching pornography. Those kinds of things all have the same effect. Obviously, going out and sleeping with someone has more negative consequences because you're pretty much putting yourself, it's going to be more difficult to defeat because you are joining yourself with another person. And every single time you join yourself with another person in that sense, especially if they're not your spouse, your brain releases oxytocin. So what is oxytocin? Oxytocin is a neurochemical that is released in order to create a bond between two individuals. So it's not healthy to do that with somebody that you don't care about, with somebody that you don't love, and most importantly, someone you're not married to. So when you're doing it with so many different people, no strings attached, what it does is you're constantly releasing oxytocin and you're bonding with so many different people, and your mind becomes confused and it creates anxiety, and you're no longer able to fully invest and secure your emotions build an emotional foundation with someone, which is ultimately what leads to fulfillment. You're constantly focusing on the thrill, which is why some people are promiscuous. It's because they are a thrill-seeking individual. Other than that, like, why would you be promiscuous? We also have to be mindful of the fact that wanting to build a relationship with someone is totally healthy. It's totally okay if you are curious and if you are desirous of a romantic relationship. However, all sexual activity needs to be curbed and restrained. And the reason why, it's because as soon as you indulge in the act with one another, what happens is there's no longer any need to achieve any more intimacy, because a sexual intimacy pretty much brings you guys together, and there's nothing else. That is the most intimate act, okay? And there's nothing you can do to make it more intimate. But really, like, sex is designed for it to be the ultimate road, I guess you can call it, to creating that bond between two individuals, mainly a husband and a wife. But when you're doing that with so many different people, you're getting a very superficial form of that bond, and that's really what creates the low self-esteem and the insecurity. So it's better to refrain from that. If you find yourself constantly chasing that, then you need to seek therapy, and you need to make sure that you are working on your internal issues, because chances are, and when I say chances are, I mean 100% chance that if you are promiscuous, there is something psychologically wrong inside, and you need to work on it and you need to fix it, because a person who is psychologically sound is not promiscuous, especially when that person is anchored in the Lord. It's very difficult to have a desire for that lifestyle, because even though, like, in our biological instincts, we sometimes think about that and hypothesize, but generally speaking, such a lifestyle doesn't produce any sort of fulfillment. And that's why God designed it to be one man and one woman in a marriage union. I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.